Can a single 5-lap session at Fiorano change the course of an entire team? What data did Hamilton discover that perplexed Leclerc and Vasseur? January 22, 2026. The sky over Fiorano barely broke through gray clouds, while a persistent drizzle moistened the asphalt of Ferrari's legendary private track. It was one of those days that, in the Formula One calendar, do not have great media weight, but that, in the halls of Maranello, are remembered for decades. Outside the circuit, hundreds of tifosi gathered, protected by umbrellas, waiting not for a spectacle, but for a symbol. In front of them, a man with 7 world titles came out of the red box for the first time in the Ferrari suit. Lewis Hamilton driving the SF26. The image alone evoked history. But what no one imagined was that, in just 5 laps, one of the most important technical changes for the Scuderia in recent years would take place. That day there were no speeches, no pyrotechnics, no choreographed marketing display. The focus was on the data, on the technical execution, on the silent validation of a concept that had been born under pressure after a devastating 2025 season. Because Ferrari did not arrive at Fiorano with laurels. She arrived wounded, with a 2025 without victories, with a reputation that hung on simulations and promises. 4th place in the Constructors' Championship was a result that forced the technical leadership, led by Fred Vasseur, to rethink the approach from the roots. What was being played at Fiorano was not a simple shakedown. It was a trial. And the judge, curiously, was not an engineer. It was Hamilton. A driver with a unique sensitivity to the dynamic behavior of the car, with the ability not only to feel the vibrations of the chassis, but to translate them into technical language useful for designers. When leaving the garage with the track still wet, he was not looking to show speed. I was looking for something more difficult: coherence. During those moments, cameras captured engineers staring at screens with surgical attention. No journalist could know it yet, but what was being collected in real time was data that would put all the work of the last 12 months to the test. And what emerged, turn after turn, was not confusion or doubt, but surprise. Legit surprise. Because the car not only worked, it responded with millimeter precision to every command, to every adjustment from Hamilton. Fred Vasseur, watching from the pit wall, was not smiling. It doesn't take a smile to understand that something exceptional was happening. The silence in the garage was not tension. It was reverence. This is how the story of SF26 began. Not with a victory, not with a pole, but with a silent murmur of validation that resonated louder than any podium. Because for the first time in years, Ferrari didn't just have hope. I had evidence. From the moment the SF26 crossed the starting line at Fiorano, it was clear that Ferrari had not come to simply comply with the protocol of a day of filming. Unlike past presentations where the priority was image and damage control in the event of possible early failures, this time the mentality was completely different. The technical team had prepared every element of the car to operate under racing conditions. Nothing was limited. Everything was enabled. And that includes one of the most revolutionary aspects of the SF26, the new active aerodynamic system. This system, which replaces the now obsolete DRS under the 2026 technical regulations, is more than a mobile spoiler. It is an intelligent aerodynamic management platform. During that shakedown, Lewis Hamilton switched between straight mode and curve mode in real time, allowing the car to dynamically transform depending on the type of circuit section. This not only helped optimize straight-line efficiency and cornering loading, but revealed, for the first time on track, the system's ability to adapt without lag or vibration. That detail, almost imperceptible to the public, was one of the first elements that stood out in the telemetry. The transition between modes was smooth. No aerodynamic oscillations. No unexpected load peaks. It was, as a Ferrari track engineer defined it that same night, a surgical execution of active technology. But it wasn't just the wing that was surprising. The heart of the car, the new SF26 engine, also had its moment of validation. Ferrari, in this new hybrid era, tripled the power of the MGUK, going from the previous 120 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts. This meant that almost half of the SF26 power came from the electrical part. In theory, it was a perfect balance. But the big question was whether this promise would work outside of the wind tunnel and simulation. The answer came lap after lap. The power delivery was constant, without losses or interruptions. In particular, the system showed linear behavior in traction phases, something critical when the rear axle is required with all the available electrical delivery. No Ferrari car had shown this stability in recent years. In parallel, the thermal management data surprised even more. The hybrid system operated without signs of overheating. And this, in a light rain, is particularly revealing, because mixed conditions tend to reveal cooling inconsistencies, especially in new packs. However, the SF26 maintains stable temperatures in its three critical zones: battery, inverter, and combustion unit. This precision is not trivial. For years, Ferrari suffered from dissonance between what its simulations projected and what the car performed on the track. But now, for the first time since ground effect was established in 2022, the runway, CFD, and wind tunnel data seem to align. Charles Leclerc was one of the first to look at the charts. He approached the monitor, took off his gloves, crossed his arms, and remained silent. What was before him was a clean power curve, without spikes or irregularities, and a regenerative energy graph that showed unusually high efficiency. His look was not one of doubt. It was genuine surprise, because he knew well the limits of the previous Ferraris. He knew what it was like to fight with nervous cars when braking, with erratic power deliveries when exiting corners, or with unexpected understeer due to poor mass distribution. And now, suddenly, a car that seemed to flow naturally. What shocked Leclerc the most was not that Hamilton did it in 5 laps. He did it without having to adapt his driving too much. Instead of fighting with the car, Lewis seemed to simply accompany it. The SF26 did not resist. He was obedient. Vasseur, for his part, maintained the external composure that characterizes him. But internally, I knew that something very big had just happened. 4 months, he had carefully tempered expectations, curbed grandiloquent speeches, and preferred careful analysis over emotional illusion. But now the data spoke for itself. What was before him was a perfect convergence. Loic Serra's conceptual design, Enrico Cardiel's operational leadership, and Hamilton's technical expertise had aligned in a journey that was intended to be nothing more than a controlled trial. And then came one of the most significant moments of the day. A senior simulation engineer approached Vasseur with a simple printout, a comparison of previous simulations with actual track data. That sheet was not intended for the press, nor for social networks, nor for corporate storytelling. It was a working document. In it, the average deviation between simulation and reality was reduced to a margin of less than 3%. For a completely new car, developed under unprecedented regulations, that number was unthinkable. Until then, Ferrari historically operated with deviations of 8 to 10% at best. Vasseur looked down, reviewed the data, and said nothing for several seconds. Then he simply nodded, with a restrained, almost imperceptible gesture. There was no room for euphoria in his leadership style. But everyone on the team knew what that gesture meant: total approval. Most revealing of all was the contrast between public and private language. In official statements, Vasseur maintained his usual tone. It went well, there were no problems. We collected the data we wanted. A deliberately neutral phrase. But internally, the most repeated phrase that afternoon was another: we had never seen this before in Maranello. Hamilton, for his part, remained in the background. He didn't need praise. His role was not to lead the celebration, but to continue extracting information from the car. I knew it, and he respected it. But even he, in a gesture that was captured by one of the team's cameras, took his phone and recorded the sound of the engine. Not for networks, not for fans, for himself. Because what he had felt behind the wheel of the SF26 was not normal. It was something that deserved to be documented. In subsequent interviews, Vasseur was clearer, although without losing his measured tone. The season does not end in Australia. It doesn't matter if we are P1 or P10. The important thing will be how we develop the car throughout the year. This statement, which may seem obvious, is actually a veiled criticism of what Ferrari has been in the past. A brilliant team in the initial photo, but erratic in subsequent progress. What Vasseur proposes is a cultural break. A transformation of Ferrari's mental model. It is no longer about impressing in the first stint of the championship, but about building an ascending, constant, and sustainable performance curve. For this reason, the SF26 that debuted in Fiorano is not the final version. It is, as the team itself calls it internally, specification A, a flexible platform designed to validate concepts, collect data, and evolve quickly without compromising the base architecture. Internally, engineers know that the true trial of SF26 will only come in the second or third update package. Vasseur wants the team to get used to winning in development as much as on the track. Therefore, it minimizes any triumphalist impulse. Because he knows that the Italian press, fans, and even sponsors can turn a good test into excessive pressure for immediate results. But this strategy of low expectations should not be confused with a lack of ambition. Vasseur does not give up winning. What it does is build the path to victory from the coldness of data, not from premature applause. Therefore, while other teams celebrate lap times, Ferrari celebrates correlation of simulations. While others display their cars as pieces of art, Ferrari tests each screw as if it were the critical link in a chain that cannot fail. The day the SF26 showed its first flash of greatness, Vasseur did not smile for the cameras. But inside the box, each engineer understood the message. It was not about having got Fiorano right. It was about continuing to get it right every weekend, on every circuit, with every iteration. And for that, you have to know how to contain your enthusiasm. Not because of weakness, but because of strategy. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.